So before diving into the study, just wanted to give you a bit of background on the Meaningful Brand Study. As Ashwini mentioned, we've been doing this since 2009, so it's in its 15th year. And what it really does is really unpack how people feel about brands, how they value them, and how they relate to them. But at its core, it really looks at how brands can meaningfully engage with consumers holistically, from a personal, functional, as well as collective aspect. But what does that even mean? When we think about meaningful, when we talk about meaningful, we're talking about what really matters to consumers. And this study divides that value contribution into 3 distinct pillars. There's the functional benefits, which is those logical, rational, basic functionality of a product or service. They're the personal benefits, which are the needs and desires that people have and they want brands to fulfill. And then finally, there's the collective benefits, which is really about those wider issues, whether they're societal, economic, environmental, all of those issues that really matter to people as well. And we're able to go deeper into understanding how brands are engaging, as well as how they can become more meaningful by double-clicking into a number of dimensions and attributes that really give us more of that idea. And when we talk about meaningful, we really look at meaningful and measure it across 3 core metrics. The first one is the Meaningful Brand Index, and this looks at the average of the brand equity with the average performance across all 3 of those pillars, the personal, functional, and collective pillars that I mentioned. The second, and that you'll be hearing a lot about actually, is the Meaningful Brand Advantage Score. And this looks at the top 10% of the performing brands compared to the average brand, so that we can really start to unpack those high opportunity areas that brands should really start to lean into. And then finally, we have the Meaningful Brand Life Impact Index. And this really looks at the contribution of how brands are measuring across all 3 pillars and how they're contributing to our quality of life. So the breadth and scale of the study is comprehensive. We talked to over 160,000 citizens, looked at over 2,000 brands in 30 markets across 47 industries. So what did we uncover? So the chaotic backdrop that people are feeling today is not new. We've been hearing about this for a number of years now. The bigger macro societal issues are impacting how people are engaging and showing up in the world. It's weighing on them heavily. In fact, 70% of people believe that the world is going in the wrong direction at a global level. And 78% believe that environmentally it's one of our biggest issues. However, on a personal level, what's really affecting us and what we're feeling most acutely is the economic crisis. But despite this sort of chaotic backdrop, people are generally satisfied and optimistic about the future. And we're really seeing this, particularly in some regions, this is even higher than in others, such as Latin America or the Middle East. But it's also, interesting how demographically this is showing up, where we're seeing that the older generations are feeling a bit more satisfied, while the younger generations are feeling a bit more optimistic. So how can this be, given the backdrop, and then we're also feeling extremely satisfied and optimistic with life? People are not sitting back and letting things just happen to them. They're taking proactive action to make effective change, whether that's for themselves, standing up for the key issues that they believe in, or taking better care of themselves from a health and well-being perspective, or for others, whether it's their loved ones or people in society that are less fortunate than them. They are taking action. And the great news is that they haven't lost faith in brands or companies. They truly believe that brands not only have the power to make a difference, but they have the responsibility to make a difference. And not, again, only on that kind of global macro level, but really on that personal level, as people are feeling the economic cost of crisis, cost of living crisis on a daily basis. And brands that do not respond to consumers' needs will face consequences. People are more discerning and empowered than ever. People will stop buying from brands if they don't respect the planet or society, if they don't value the same things that an individual values, or if they don't recognize the importance of kind of that personal, engaging on a personal level. Cancel culture is real. And now more than ever, brands really, when times are tough, People want brands to show up with more humanity and generosity. They're looking for brands to go beyond just selling and really about supporting and empowering. And this is specifically true for boomers. However, unfortunately, most brands are just not measuring up. In fact, we found that 75% of brands could disappear and people wouldn't care. And interestingly, I've done this study for a number of years now. This number doesn't fluctuate much year on year. It's 73, 76 some years. But the point is that brands are still not doing enough to make people care about them. So how can brands be more meaningful? To holistically deliver across all three pillars is key. Is key. People want their products and services to work at a basic functional level. They want their personal needs and desires to be fulfilled, and they want brands to pay attention to the collective whole and really act for greater good. However, we can see that depending on what's happening culturally, how much a brand needs to deliver across these three pillars can differ. And what we are seeing from this recent study is that people are looking to have more personal benefits and a little bit less from a functional benefits. However, what we're seeing is that brands are currently under-delivering in the personal benefits and over-delivering in the functional. And, this is, did it switch? Okay, sorry. So this is, a really big problem. And especially, it's good to note here, though, that the brands that are actually delivering on these personal benefits perform 57% better than the average brand. And this is really where that me-economy comes in, where we see that shift on the focus to the self, and those acts, again, for greater good are now expected. So how can a brand be more meaningful? We found three kind of key areas in people's lives they want brands to show up, support, and empower them. And I'm going to take you through 9 ways to grow in the me-economy. And some of them might sound familiar to you. I just encourage you to listen to them this time through the lens of lens of reality, not just trends. We've been hearing about some of these things year on year, and it's about time that brands really do lean into this and pay attention. So let's dive right in. Be my best self. So I intentionally support my health and wellness first. We all know and have been hearing so much about oh, yeah, sorry, I thought that was the wrong slide. We've been hearing so much about health and well-being and the focus on physical, personal, emotional health. People really are leaning into this. They're taking much better care of themselves. 71% make a real effort to be more healthy, and they want brands to act in turn. And we see that brands that do inspire people to live a healthier life do perform a lot better than the average brand. The second is to help me feel resilient and happy. And I've already talked a lot about how people are feeling optimistic and satisfied. They're also feeling quite happy and resilient, and they want brands to act in turn. Brands that really share in this positivity, this resilience, will break through kind of that negative noise and the clutter. The third is add color to my life. So people are seeking more meaningful experiences. And brands that do offer, inspiring new ideas or, helping them to inspire new ideas and to seek inspiration from brands do better. And we heard a really great example today from Acura with Chaki's Journey. Just a much more meaningful experience beyond just the products that you're selling. The second area is facilitate my life. So make it all super seamless. Simplifying a life actually was the #1 attribute across all 3 pillars that consumers said contribute to their quality of life. There's something to be said about removing things from people's lives than just adding things, bells and whistles. People are looking for that simplicity, and brands that deliver on that perform better. But people are also looking for more control in this world where we're feeling out of control. And again, brands that deliver against this perform a lot better than the average brand. So fits my needs and budget. Money is always top of mind for people, and especially now with the economic crisis, cost of living crisis that people are feeling, people are being more discerning about how they are spending their money. And this is true across all generations, although boomers are a little bit more cautious than the younger counterparts. But people want it's not just about the cost, it's about their dollar working harder for them. They want their dollar to go further. And brands that deliver on this, brands that offer that good value for money or offer a range of products and services that fits their needs, which interestingly minimizes brand hopping as well, really do perform over 40% better than the average brand. And we've all heard that saying, time is money. People are also looking to brands to help them to save on time. So create a safety net. Safety and security in the digital world is not something new. We've been hearing about this for a long time, and it's still very much a concern for consumers today. So anything that brands are doing from that perspective, it's really good to tell consumers what you are doing to help them to feel that safety and security. And what's interesting is we're seeing it manifest differently based on demographics, where we're seeing the younger generations are really kind of having a negative light on technology in general and are feeling that it's deteriorating their mental health, which makes sense. A lot of the younger generations have grown up with the internet. They're more susceptible to scamming and cyberbullying and things like that. But the older generation really was focusing more on security and control. Really looking after their personal data, as well as, just being able to show up as their authentic selves in the digital world. In fact, almost 75% of boomers said that the digital world is not a safe place to be themselves. And then the final area is create a platform for good. So the first is to acknowledge, respect, and celebrate our differences. Again, this is something we've been hearing about in the cultural zeitgeist for a long time now. People do want to be seen and heard as individuals. They want brands to respect them, and they want to live harmoniously, coexist harmoniously with people that are different from them. Over 75% of people have said that. However, only 40% of people and only half of Gen Z don't feel that they can express themselves. So brands that really offer them that platform to express themselves and celebrate who they are as individuals really will resonate more. Invest in our future. So as I mentioned, consumers are taking more of a stand, they are having more proactive action, and they are wanting to live a more conscientious lifestyle. Brands that really dial into that and help them to live that conscientious lifestyle will resonate more with consumers. And 74% of people want brands to act now and really to help them and to invest in their future. We heard a lot from earlier about how what kind of world we want our children to grow up in. But the operative word is acting. So it's about doing, not just saying. Which is actually a great segue to my final point, which is walk the talk. Trust and transparency, again, we hear a lot about this, is still highly expected from people. However, and 80% of people believe that brands and companies should be transparent about their commitments and promises. But only over 35% of people actually believe that companies are doing that. And this presents a huge problem. There is a huge gap that needs to be filled. Brands that are candid and straightforward will build more meaningful relationships and more long-lasting relationships for the future. So that is the 9 ways to grow in the Me-conomy. And that is the end of my presentation. Sorry.
Please welcome 4A's Amy Pacheco.
Thank you so much for that. Just a couple of questions for you, and I think we'll have time for a few extra questions from the audience as well. First thought is how brands are increasingly called upon to be superheroes today with superpowers, not just delivering against these functional benefits you talked about, but also social, environmental ones. What's the key takeaway for brands from this rich data set?
So the first key, there's two actually that I want to mention. The first is what I was talking about, is the shift into the personal sphere, really shifting on that individual level. Even when you are helping the greater good, it reflects on that individual. People will buy from those brands. It's all about the personal benefits right now. But the second point that I wanted to raise that I do think is the most important point of the presentation is the final point that I mentioned, which is walk the talk. We talk a lot about a lot of things, and then it doesn't necessarily come to fruition. And people are, they're very discerning, and they understand. They understand brands aren't being transparent. So really putting your money where your mouth is, and say what you mean and mean what you say, I would say is the main point.
Which leads me to my next question, which is, what are some of the steps that brands can take to successfully deliver against that shift towards purposeful profit that can drive the sustained business growth that they're looking for?
So it's purposeful profit is interesting because it's become a little bit of a buzzword, I feel, for some companies and brands that just don't even know what their purpose is before they're getting into kind of that profit aspect. What this study is really great about doing is really uncovering what areas brands can really dial up and dial down, how your brand is performing in a specific area. So for instance, if we look at respect, celebrate our differences, we saw that HBO didn't perform very well. There's an opportunity to grow. However, Disney performed very well. Also, from a feeling resilient and happy, Pandora had a lot of room to grow. Spotify performing really well. But the point I wanted to make here, and also from an auto perspective, we've been talking about auto, help my health and well-being, support my health and well-being. Land Rover performed extremely well. Nissan didn't perform well. So brands really need to understand what their purpose is first, and if it makes sense, then to dial into that, and authentically follow along as well with where your consumers are at, so that you can continue to grow through action.
Yeah, excellent. So then, what conversations should agencies be having with their client teams, given that I think you said over half of consumers there's an expectation that brands can work to address some of the global challenges that we're facing, but also at the same time showing respect for that personal consumer?
So I would say, just talking with clients, honestly, it's about not just hearing, but listening to your consumers, having a finger on the pulse, understanding where your consumers are, and following in kind. And again, I'm going to bring it back to the brand-specific purpose. It's about doing it from an authentic standpoint as well, not just jumping on the bandwagon because it's the new latest thing. We've been talking a lot about AI today as well. And brands are, people are just kind of hopping into that bandwagon. Leverage AI to do some of these 9 things to grow in the 9 ways to grow in the Me-conomy. It's about really understanding how to leverage everything around us and how to make it, how to deliver across these 9 ways.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Seema.
Yep.
Kevin, are there questions?
Indeed. So question, Seema, how do you encourage a client or brand that's historically non-transparent to be more transparent?
Oh, indeed.
Baby steps. It's baby steps. It's just doing one. Again, it's one foot in front of the other. Transparency. Again, show them the study. People are looking for it. People are rejecting brands. They are canceling brands. If brands don't act in turn and are transparent, they will get canceled. So it's to the brand's benefit to, even if you don't have to take leaps and bounds, but just one small step that can lead to a longer lasting relationship with your consumers.
And the next question is, we've seen brands that have really led with a collective benefit and are very successful in sort of the short term. Do you have a sense for what consumers' expectations are for that brand to evolve and grow? So maybe an example would be, you buy a pair of socks, you get a pair of socks, right? Great way to start. You see a lot of success there. What does that look like longer term, and are the expectations, or is that sort of that in itself of itself was enough?
So I think I'm gonna go back to what I said earlier about keeping your finger on the pulse, the cultural pulse. It's really understanding about where your consumers are and growing along with them authentically. Yeah, that's essentially what I think is the best answer for that.
I think the last question that we have is, when speaking to an advertiser about being a meaningful brand, Can imagine that there's probably some uncomfortable reflection if they aren't. And how do you have those conversations and help encourage them to find ways that they can become more meaningful?
Well, the great thing about this study, and actually this came up last year, we were doing a project with a brand that did not perform well at all in our study. But it's just really about uncovering those opportunity areas is what to frame them in that. Brands really should be wondering where they're not performing so that they can dial up in that area. And having these kind of scary conversations with your clients is something that, again, someone mentioned earlier that we're paid for, we're consultants at the end of the day, but we're measured on our performance. We need to have these difficult conversations with our clients and tell them, hey, you're not doing well in this area. Let's let's look into this. Let's build on this so that we can have that sustained growth for the future.
Excellent. Thank you, Seema and Amy.